Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going on a deep dive. We're going to unearth the story of Arabella Huntington. She's a fascinating figure, really, from America's Gilded Age. And guess what? Our main source, the audiobook page for An American Beauty by Shana Abe.
Oh, wow, an audiobook page.
Yeah, so we're mining an audiobook page for, like, historical gold.
Interesting.
Yeah, it proves that you can find intriguing information in the most unexpected places.
Yeah, absolutely. It's remarkable how much you can get from, well, it's essentially just marketing material.
Right.
You know, it's condensed, it's a history lesson, it's got those little breadcrumbs that make you want to learn more.
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump into Arabella's story. She begins her life in 1867 in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
And the audiobook page describes her as a champagne girl at a gambling parlor. Not exactly the start you'd picture for someone who becomes like one of the wealthiest women in America.
No, not really, but I guess it speaks volumes about the limited opportunities, that were available to women back then, especially for someone starting in poverty. And when societal norms, they restricted women's options.
Yeah.
And it's even more impressive, right? When you consider that Arabella, she defied those limitations.
Totally.
And she ultimately became the wealthiest self-made woman in America. It makes you wonder, what was her journey like?
I know, right? It really makes you curious. Okay, so then the audiobook page introduces us to Collis Huntington. He was a railroad tycoon, 30 years her senior.
Yeah.
And it hints at their scandalous affair.
Oh, wow.
So what can you tell us about Collis and their relationship, especially thinking about the context of the Gilded Age?
Well, you have to remember that Collis Huntington, he was a man of immense power and influence during the Gilded Age.
Right.
And their relationship, I think it really reflects the era's complexities.
Right.
It showcases those stark power imbalances between men and women, makes you think about the societal pressures and expectations Arabella would have had to face.
It definitely does. It adds another layer to her story.
Yeah.
So then we find out that Collis helped Arabella relocate to New York, and he set her up as a, quote, genteel Southern widow. Seems like a pretty calculated move, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's like textbook reinvention. By creating this new persona, Arabella was able to, strategically maneuver the, rigid social hierarchy of Gilded Age New York. This really highlights her intelligence and ambition.
Yeah.
She understood the rules of the game, and she played them to her advantage.
Absolutely. But it's important to point out that she was more than just a woman, kind of benefiting from a wealthy man's support.
Right.
The book emphasizes her financial savvy.
Oh.
She didn't just live off of Collis's fortune.
Yeah.
She actually used his money as like seed capital to build her own independent wealth. And that's a big deal, especially when you consider the limitations women faced back then.
Oh, absolutely. Her financial independence, it really challenges the prevailing narrative about women's roles during that period. It reminds us that women have always been capable of economic power,
Right.
even when society tried to restrict them. It makes you think, though, was financial independence like her ultimate goal, or was it a stepping stone to something bigger?
Yeah, that is a great question. And even with all her wealth, Arabella still faced hurdles, like trying to gain acceptance amongst New York's elite. The 400 social circle.
Oh, yeah, the 400.
What were some of the obstacles she encountered? Trying to break into this exclusive group.
Oh, you can just imagine the scrutiny, every single action, every word analyzed and judged, against, of course, the strict social codes of the era. But Arabella, she persevered despite these barriers. She was determined to, establish herself, and it shows her resilience and her ambition. But it also makes you wonder, was there a price she had to pay for her acceptance? What compromises did she have to make along the way?
It's interesting to think about. Now, the audiobook page also mentions these attempts to blackmail Arabella
Oh, really?
due to her past.
Yeah.
And it even alludes to an impossible romance
Yeah.
that tested her loyalties.
Wow. Intrigue and morality all in one.
I know, this really adds another dimension to her story.
It does. It highlights those moral dilemmas she must face.
Right.
On one hand, she had painstakingly built this life of privilege and status.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, she was facing these threats of, of exposure, and she was drawn to a love that could jeopardize everything. I mean, it really makes you think, what choices would you make when facing those kinds of conflicting pressures?
That's a great question. And that kind of leads us to the book's title, right?
Mm.
An American Beauty. it suggests that her story it's more than just a simple love story.
Oh, absolutely. It seems like her life was a tapestry woven with ambition and love and betrayal, resilience.
Right.
She built a business empire, navigated high society's kind of treacherous waters, and she faced down blackmailers, all while seeking love and happiness. What stands out to you so far about her story?
I think I'm most struck by the contrast between her humble beginnings and her incredible rise to power. She's like this fascinating mix of ambition and vulnerability. It's really incredible what we've uncovered from a single audiobook page.
I know, right? It's like finding a hidden gem in a pile of rocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's captivating to consider all the complexities of her life, especially with, the limited information we have right now. But let's dive a little deeper into Arabella's story and see if we can unravel some more of the mysteries surrounding this impossible romance.
Okay, let's do it.
It's fascinating to think about, like this duality of Arabella's life.
Oh.
On one hand, she's this champagne girl from Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other, she's been transformed into this sophisticated queen of New York society.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder, did she ever find like genuine happiness amidst, all that wealth and privilege? Or was she always kind of looking over her shoulder, haunted by her past?
It's the question that lingers, isn't it? And it really does seem to be a central theme in the book. The fact that she was subjected to blackmail, it suggests that her past, it never really stayed buried.
Right.
And this whole impossible romance, it hints at a deeper yearning for something more than this, calculated world she built.
She almost sounds like a character out of a Henry James novel.
Yeah.
Navigating a world of hidden desires and unspoken secrets. But unlike a fictional character, Arabella was a real person, making real choices with real consequences. The audiobook page doesn't really go into detail about her investments, but it does emphasize her business acumen. Do we have any insights into how she built her fortune?
Unfortunately, the source material, it's a bit light on specifics, but we can kind of extrapolate a little bit based on what we know about investment opportunities during the Gilded Age.
Okay.
Railroads were obviously booming, thanks in part to Collis's work, but there were also these other burgeoning industries like steel and oil and finance.
No.
It's intriguing to imagine Arabella, maybe with some advice from Collins, skillfully navigating those markets and amassing her own independent wealth.
And let's not forget about philanthropy. The audiobook page mentions that Arabella eventually becomes like a major benefactor of the arts and education. Was that a common practice among the wealthy elite during the Gilded Age?
Oh, absolutely. Philanthropy was huge, a significant part of high society. It was a way for the wealthy to kind of demonstrate their social conscience, contribute to the public good,
Right.
and cement their legacy. I mean, think about people like Andrew Carnegie and his libraries, or the Rockefeller family and their foundation.
Right.
Arabella followed in those footsteps. She used her wealth to support institutions like the Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens, which, are still thriving today.
It's amazing how those institutions serve as like a lasting testament to her vision and generosity. And it kind of speaks to this desire to give back, to leave a positive mark on the world, which makes those blackmail attempts all the more, intriguing. What kind of secrets from her past could have been so damaging that someone would try to extort her?
Well, the audiobook page, unfortunately, leaves us in suspense. But we can speculate a bit, right? Perhaps there were details about her early life as a champagne girl that she wanted to keep hidden. Or maybe there were other, even more scandalous secrets that she desperately wanted to protect. It reminds us that everyone, even those who seem to have it all, has vulnerabilities and hidden chapters in their lives.
Yeah, and those vulnerabilities can make them targets for people who want to exploit them. It adds a layer of tragedy to Arabella's story. Even with, all the opulence and success, she built this incredible life for herself, yet she was still haunted by the ghosts of her past.
Exactly. It speaks to the complexities of human nature. We're all a mix of light and shadow, ambition and vulnerability. And Arabella's story, in a lot of ways, I think, embodies those contradictions.
And let's not forget that impossible romance that's hinted at. Was it connected to her past in some way? Or was it a separate kind of threat to her carefully constructed image?
Well, again, the audiobook page keeps us guessing. But the fact that they use the word impossible, it suggests that this romance, it went against societal norms in a big way.
Yeah.
Maybe it involves someone of a different social class. a forbidden love that could have scandalized New York society, or maybe it was a relationship that challenged, traditional gender roles, or defied the expectations of her marriage.
It's almost like she's trapped between these two worlds, the carefully crafted facade of her public life, and then this yearning for a love that defies convention.
It makes you wonder if Arabella ever really felt free, or if she was always kind of playing a role, both in her public life and in her personal relationships.
It definitely adds another dimension to the idea of her being an American beauty, the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about physical beauty, right? It's about the complexities and contradictions that lie beneath the surface.
And it begs the question, what is beauty, really? Is it about conforming to societal expectations? Or is it about embracing our true selves, even the parts that might be considered, imperfect or scandalous?
No, it seems like Arabella's life was, in many ways, like a constant negotiation between those two opposing forces.
And that negotiation, that struggle to reconcile our desires with the expectations that are placed upon us, that's something that I think we can all relate to, Even though she lived over a century ago, Arabella's story, it still resonates with us today. It reminds us that we all have our own, impossible romances, those desires and dreams that we might be afraid to pursue for fear of judgment or rejection.
It's powerful to see how those universal themes of love and ambition and societal pressure, they transcend time and place.
Yeah.
But the audiobook page kind of leaves us hanging with this impossible romance.
Yeah, it does.
What insights can we gain from analyzing the potential consequences that Arabella faced if this romance were to come to light?
Well, given the rigid social hierarchy of the Gilded Age, the consequences could have been devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Exposure could have led to social ostracism, loss of her, hard-earned status, and even the potential ruin of her reputation in business ventures. It makes you admire her courage for even considering defying those norms for love.
It is a testament to the power of human connection and the allure of the forbidden. Even in a world governed by such strict social codes, the heart wants what it wants.
Yeah, and sometimes the heart is willing to risk everything for a chance at happiness.
It's a powerful reminder that history is not just a collection of dates and events. It's a story about human passions and desires played out on a grand stage.
And Arabella's story, it seems, is a particularly dramatic and captivating one. It's amazing how much we've been able to glean just from an audiobook page.
I know.
It's like we've been given a little glimpse into like a hidden world filled with intrigue and romance and the complexities of human nature.
And there's still so much more to uncover. We've talked about the challenges Arabella faced, the secrets she kept, the impossible romances that she may have pursued. But what about her legacy? What lasting impact did she have on the world? We'll explore that and more in the final part of our deep dive.
Wow, we've been on quite a journey with Arabella Huntington, from those humble beginnings in Richmond to her rise in New York society. And then, of course, all those little hints of scandal and forbidden love. It's really fascinating how much her story kind of reflects the contradictions of the Gilded Age itself. It was a time of incredible wealth and opportunity, but also these really rigid social structures and hidden struggles.
Yeah, she really does seem to embody that whole era.
Yeah.
Balancing that ambition with vulnerability.
Yeah.
Navigating a world of dazzling beauty, but also those hidden shadows. It makes you wonder, what was her lasting impact? How should we remember Arabella Huntington today?
That's a great question. The audiobook page doesn't really go into too much detail about her later life, but it does mention her philanthropy, right? Yeah.
She became a major benefactor of the arts and education.
Yes, and I think that's a crucial part of her legacy. Think about the institutions that she supported: the Huntington Library, the Art Museum, the Botanical Gardens. These are places where people from all walks of life can experience beauty and knowledge and connect with the past. So in a way, I think Arabella's vision, it still touches countless lives, even today.
It's amazing how she was able to channel her wealth and influence into something that was, so meaningful and enduring. It makes you think about the choices we make with our own resources and how they can shape the world around us.
Oh, absolutely. Arabella's story, it's this reminder that a legacy isn't just about, accumulating wealth or achieving some kind of social status.
Right.
It's about the impact we have on other people and the values that we choose to champion. And in her case, it seems like she chose to invest in beauty and knowledge and, enrichment of future generations. It's inspiring, isn't it? To think that someone who faced So many challenges and navigated such a complex social landscape, could still leave behind such a positive mark on the world.
It definitely challenges that, that idea that the Gilded Age was all about extravagance and social climbing.
Right.
Arabella's story reminds us that even within those, pretty strict constraints, individuals, they could still make choices that went beyond their own personal gain and contributed to a larger purpose.
And maybe that's, one of the most important takeaways from our deep dive today. It's easy to get caught up in the scandals and the impossible romances, but at the heart of it all, there's this woman who defied expectations. She carved her own path, and then she used her influence to create something beautiful, something lasting. Yeah, it's this powerful reminder that history is filled with these really nuanced stories just waiting to be discovered and explored. And who knows, maybe Arabella's story will inspire someone listening, to pursue their own passions, to challenge those conventions and make their own unique contribution to the world.
I love that thought. And it just goes to show that you never know where inspiration might strike. We started this deep dive with just an audiobook page.
Right.
And we ended up exploring the life of a remarkable woman who left such a lasting legacy. It's this reminder that fascinating stories, they really are hidden everywhere, just waiting for us to uncover them. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the world around you. You never know what you're going to find.
Well said. And who knows, maybe one day someone will be, diving deep into our lives, trying to understand the choices that we made and the impact we had on the world. It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It is. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the life of Arabella Huntington. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this fascinating journey. And to all our listeners, keep those minds curious, and remember, there's always more to discover.